In today's lesson, we're going to be taking a look at factors that affect the creation and experience of artworks. This is often referred to as the lenses in art, or those things in our lives that affect how we experience and perceive what we make and what we see. Through this lesson, what you should be able to do at the end is explain the relationship between the art maker, the art viewer, and the artwork itself, and see how the artwork actually becomes a means of communication between the maker and the viewer. Secondly, you're going to be able to identify factors that influence unintended interpretations of artworks, identify common factors that affect the creation and interpretation of artworks, define the term intersectionality and explain its significance in art making and experiencing art, and being able to apply the concept of intersectionality to artworks. Artists essentially are communicating ideas and messages. As an art maker, it's important for us to understand the relationship of the form and the content in how the message that the artist intends is actually communicated and then interpreted by the viewer. Assume characteristics of art. This is important to understand that there are assumptions that we are working with. Number one is that artwork is actually a form of communication. It's visual and it's experiential, which means that we experience the artwork with our whole body, our eyes, with our ears, with touch, depending on the media that's being used. And also, a secondary assumption is that artworks are created by some person. They are a product of human culture and human creativity. Thirdly, we have assumed that artwork has a presence, a spatiality or a temporal presence in time, although it doesn't necessarily have to be in the form of an object, okay? Because we have digital art forms, we have performance art forms, conceptual art forms that do not necessarily embody a physical object. We also have the idea that an artwork has an intended audience. There's a difference between things that we do for practice, experimentation, exploration that remain private. I'm working on the assumption that artwork, as defined as a capital A art, is intended to be seen by somebody. We also have to remember that the intended audience doesn't necessarily need to be the only audience. I may create a piece of art for person A, but it may eventually be seen by other people in different places and different times. So, artwork as a form of communication. Artists need to make decisions on how they are going to be communicating their ideas. We have to also remember that artists are deliberate. They are using their intent to manipulate how the message is communicated. They do this through the choice of media. Are they using painting, sculpture? Is it watercolor versus acrylic? Is it bronze versus marble? They're doing it through their techniques. Additive sculpture versus subtractive. Washes of paint versus using the paint thickly with impasto. Through composition, is it balanced, asymmetrical? Is it informal? Is it radial balance? Also, each person has their own individual style that combines these various media techniques and compositions that becomes their visual signature. The artist also is very purposeful in what they choose to put into their image. This is referred to as the content. When we're referring to content, we're talking about the subject matter. Is it a landscape? Is it a portrait? Is it a figure? Is it a history painting? Is it a narrative painting? Is it a still life? To what degree of detail does the artist decide to depict their subject matter with? Is it hyper-realistic? Is it abstracted? Right? What we're dealing with content is what we physically see in the artwork. And depending on the artist, there will be a tremendous amount, or some people may say that there is very little. So, the relationship between the two. Essentially, we have the artist and the viewer. What happens here is that the artist creates something that the viewer is able to see and creates a dialogue. The viewer then is able to understand what the artist is trying to understand. This would be the model, as you see on the screen, of a traditional dialogue between two people. However, the artists are using a media. They're using an image in order to communicate their ideas and their thinking. So the artist creates the work, The artist then interprets the work. What we need to remember here is that the intent here from artist to image doesn't necessarily need to be the same as the interpretation from the image forward. What we're trying to do here is recognize that the communication is fluid. The idea of lenses is that what we have happening is a dialogue through a media that affects how we are able to perceive the world. This brings us to the idea of unintended audiences, right? What artists produce transcend time and place. So, intended audiences, we have John Constable's The Hay-Wain. This image was created in 1821 during the Industrial Revolution in England. So this is during the 1800s. It was created at a very specific time for a particular audience. 1900s pass, 2000s pass, and we are here today, almost 200 years later. The people that John Constable originally created this piece for are very different than the people today. And then it's the lenses of their time that affected his creation. And likewise, it's the lenses of our culture today that affect how we experience this particular work. We also have geographical audiences, right? We know that this image was created in England, a very small part of the globe, and now, as a result of digital technologies, right, the image goes out to Europe, goes over to Canada and North America. It can be seen in South America, Africa, South Asia, Australia, as well as in China. Geography changes how people experience the work. The people in England will have a different relationship to the image than people from Africa, or people from China, or people from South America, who will also have a different experience than people from Canada and Australia, who have very direct ties to the English systems. So, the importance of understanding time and place. Context is extremely, extremely important. When we're creating artwork, it's important to understand that all of the layers that affect how we perceive and understand what we are making, we call these our lenses or filters. These filters affect our viewing of images as well. I want you to think of 3 lenses that affect your making and your experiences, okay, of artworks. For example, for me, I am a male, which is one lens. I am an adult in my 30s, which is a second lens. I am a teacher, an educator, which is another lens. These are the different sort of personalities or personas that I have that affect who I am, but also how I see the world. What I'd like you to do is take a moment and brainstorm at least 3 of these lenses that affect your own making and experiences of artworks. The following are all of the different potential lenses that the artist could have, and on the other side we have the same list for the viewer. Right? This is not an exhaustive list, but these are some things to be thinking about that affect how we make and interpret art. What job do you have? Are you Christian? Are you Buddhist? Are you Muslim? Religion plays a huge factor, whether you're male or female. Whether you live in North America or Africa. What's your family situation? Are you in good health, poor health? Are you able to see? Are you not able to see? Are you a quadriplegic? Okay. Our physical and mental health affects how we produce and what we experience. Your age, your economic status, your political orientation, whether you are conservative, liberal, socialist, capitalist. What you do with your recreational time, your ethnicity, sexuality. Are you straight? Are you gay? Are you transgendered? What language do you speak? What social class do you belong to? What's your physical abilities? All of these factors affect how we see and how we make works of art. The concept of intersectionality. This quote here, intersectionality is a feminist theory first highlighted by Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989. It is a method of studying the relationship among multiple dimensions and modalities of social relationships and subject formations, suggesting that and seeking to examine how various socially and culturally constructed categories, gender, race, class, disability, etc., interact on multiple and often some simultaneous levels, contributing to systematic social inequality. Intersectionality holds that the classical models of oppression within society, such as those based on race, ethnicity, gender, religion, nationality, sexual orientation, class, or disability, do not act independently of one another. Instead, these forms of oppression interrelate, creating a system of oppression that reflects the intersection of multiple forms of discrimination. So this idea is really about the fact that we have multiple dimensions to who we are. We are not simply one have one single orientation or one single personality. There's multiple dimensions to who we are. And it's how those dimensions interact in different situations that affect how we are treated and how we perceive the world. For example, historically speaking, we can look at the US and their systems of segregation and discrimination. Right? There's a hierarchy that existed within the American social system during the 1800s. Right? At the top of the ladder was white men. Right? If you were white, you were of a different social status, had a different status within society. If you were black, you would be on a different scale, right? And a different rung on the ladder, so to speak. Right? That is a one-dimensional view of looking at race and how people are treated. But if we investigate further, right, there is a different hierarchy actually in place. Right? There's the white male, there's the white female, there is the black male, there is the black female. And it's when these different identities intersect that we start to see the specific effects of people's experiences through their artworks. So intersectionality in art, right? It's based on identity politics, right? How we present ourselves to the world and how others react to what we produce, right? We have to be aware of who you are fundamentally in order to decide what you're going to create and how you're going to do it. Right? We can also use intersectionality to study art history. How do the identities of the artists at the time affect the production of artworks? And lastly, we can use intersectionality to understand and interpret the meaning of an artwork. Right? Those experiences of an artist that we're able to uncover are extremely important because it gives us clues and insights to what the artist was intending and thus affects how we interpret the work. We need to make sure that we're looking at the intersectionality of the artists, of the makers, but also the intersectionality of ourselves as viewers. And it's the combination of the two in which meaning really starts to emerge.